Hey everyone, my name is Lance, and this is another episode of Amped About Aimpad. For today's episode, I wanted to review a couple of things that we've been working on and some improvements that have been occurring in the MK850, so let's go right into it. So the first thing I wanted to kind of show off was the Cooler Master control pad. So this is something that we've worked on with Cooler Master for a Kickstarter for several months now, and it's starting to come together. This is still a pre-production sample, but I wanted to show you that this is a product that is coming, and it is very real. It is an all analog. There's 24 analog keys on this keypad. It also includes a nice little wrist rest that's nice and plush and magnetic to keep it in place. It also still has the same scroll wheels up here at the top that the MK850 has, and I'll kind of go over a little bit, a few things that are interesting with that. But more or less, what I'd like to do is to jump into the new software update and firmware update that's occurred on the MK850 recently, and show you kind of some things that may not be terribly clear, but are extremely useful and beneficial to understand. So let's jump into it. All right, so there's several things that I wanted to review on the Cooler Master portal software that's used to control the MK850. The first thing that's not terribly clear at first is what the difference between a profile is from a keyboard perspective and what an Aimpad profile is. So the first thing to understand is that profiles here in the far top right corner, there's 4 of them, and they maintain and store all of the settings of Aimpad profiles, lighting profiles, key mappings, and macros. So there's a ton of this stuff that's all stored in this profile, and they can be exported and imported. But they are primarily consisting of all of those functionalities, and each of those things can be changed on each individual profile. And I can change which profile is active in 2 ways. One is through the software. I just click it and it makes that profile active, or using the keyboard, I can press the FN key and then use the number 1, 2, 3, and 4 to make those active. So that's the broad perspective of what a profile is. Now, each of those things are a little more complicated when we dive deeper into it. So that's to try to understand what Aimpad profiles are. So Aimpad profiles are basically specifically designed functionalities that encompass lighting and key mapping and macros, all within one individual purpose-driven profile. So it's a little bit difficult to explain, but bear with me. There's 5 individual Aimpad profiles per main keyboard profile. So that means you can have a total of 20 different applications or programs or games or desired functionality, 20 different configurations on this keyboard. It's a lot of stuff, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. The way that you can kind of break it down is, so for each individual profile, there's 5 of these profiles, and you can set up each of them to be whatever you want. So if I go to this Aimpad profile and I select it here, let's say I wanted to give it a name, boring keyboard mode. Now we can say it, actually I want this to be my Photoshop profile, and I'll explain why in just a second. But you can have it set up for a specific game, so that when this profile is active, and you want to use it for a specific game, or maybe a full-on macro configuration, and I'll show that a little bit as well. So they're individual purpose-driven things, and you can basically select them in the software by just clicking on them, and that makes that profile active. Or you can use these keys on the left, the M1, M2, M3, and 4. So let's say I want to make the M5 active, I just push M5 and it's active. So I don't need the software to be running or anything like that. It's all configured from the keyboard if I want to. And that's why these M1 through M5 keys are extremely powerful, and it kind of gets overlooked a little bit because of that reason. So you can name them whatever you want, and you can also change the lighting for each of those things. So let's say I have the desire that I want this first profile to have this nice rainbow wave, and that's going to be activated anytime that the M1 profile is active. Let's say I want to switch my macro keys. So if I go to M3 and make macros active, and I go to lighting, I don't like green. I want it to be something else. So if I don't know, do the fireball one, because macros are cool. And I don't want it to be white. I want it to be red. So anytime I push the keys, you'll see a fireball like flies off to the left or to the right, depending on which key I press. All right, so that's pretty cool. But the whole point of that is that you can make it so that, again, the software doesn't need to be running. You can just look at the keyboard and you can see, okay, M1 is active because the M1 key lights up, but also all the keys are in this rainbow wave pattern. And anytime I go to M3, M3 lights up, but it also has the nice fireball thing. So it gives me two ways to realize which of those 20 profiles are active at this point in time. And again, if I get confused, I can push Fn and it will highlight here that the keyboard profile 1 is active. So I'm in keyboard profile 1 and Aimpad profile M3. Okay, hopefully that's clear on what you can do. You can change anything that you want. You can change the mapping for each of those individual profiles, the lighting, and the macros. And with key mapping, it's staggering. You can just press a key on the keyboard to remap it, or you can go through the whole list and assign a specific macro, letters and numbers and media keys and punctuation and a bunch of random tons of stuff. And I don't want to go wasting too much time going into that detail, but more or less, that is the effectiveness of what you can do with the keys for Aimpad keys. Now there's a couple things that I wanted to highlight that were a little interesting with the scroll wheels. So it hasn't been possible to do too much with them in the past, but the new software enabled a lot of functionality that may not be clear. So one little fun thing you can do is if you go under here and then go to wheel keys, you can go to make it be a left click. So I'm going to assign that to be the left click up, and also when I scroll down, it will also be a left click. So what this can do, let's say you have the desire to press the mouse button really, really fast, and you want to show off how fast you can do it. So in certain games, like the cookie clicker games or things that require you to push the mouse key a lot for some reason, normally you would just use your mouse and you'd be clicking. You might get 8 clicks per second, or maybe if you're really fast 10, or godly 11. But more or less, it's really hard to press the mouse button really, really fast. Now, if you have the ability to map it to a scroll wheel, watch what happens when I scroll this wheel just a few times, up and down, really, really fast. I am now 10 times faster than I was before, right? It's 103 clicks versus my measly 8 clicks every single second. So that's one little way that you can, I guess, cheat, but it's a really cool, fun little thing that you can do with the MK850. So something else that I wanted to highlight, that let's say I wanted to do some Photoshop configurations. So what I can do is, if I go back to the mapping, let's say I want to adjust the brush size and the brush thickness or the brush hardness. So those are typically configured using the bracket keys. So what I'm going to do is just push the bracket key to map it to increase it, and then go down to this one and decrease it. Now the other thing that you can do is assign a macro. So I have macros that are, I have one macro that's already defined, and I'll go ahead and do that now to assign it, but there's one macro I haven't made yet because I wanted to show you kind of what's involved here. So if I go over here and I go to shift, and then I'm going to plus minus this one. So that is just the name of the macro that I'm going to do. If you look at the other macro I've already created, this is what it looks like. It just presses the shift key, presses that bracket key, and then releases them. So what I'm going to do is I click the record button, and I'm going to press the shift key and the down, and then stop the recording. Now you can see there's a lag delay, and I don't want there to be any delay at all. I want it to be as fast as possible. So what you can do is go to input delay and set it to be the overall delay, and I'm going to say 3 milliseconds. It's really dang fast. So all of those are going to be shifting by basically pressing right shift and the left bracket, and releasing left bracket and releasing the right shift, all within the space of about 10 milliseconds. Okay, and I'm going to apply that. Now if I go back to key mapping again, and I just needed to select that scroll wheel, go down to macros, and it was that guy there. And now I have that macro assigned, and those keys are assigned here. So what that can do is some really cool things like in Photoshop. So right now the brush size is pretty big and the hardness is really strong. So if I want to decrease the brush size, it's really easy. I just scroll up and down, and then it's extremely responsive because that lag time again was like 3 milliseconds. So you can move up and down extremely fast. If I were to do that on the keyboard, I have to go tap, tap, tap. Oh, too big. All right, now I'm gonna go down. So you're doing a lot of this function, and it's not smooth and it's not responsive. It's really, really fast, really, really responsive, or as slow as I want it to be based off that scroll wheel. The same thing, so again, I can make it big or I can make it small, extremely fast. Now if I want to soften it, I would just scroll down and it's soft, and if I increase it more and more for the hardness and the softness on the fly, using the keyboard. It's a really, really powerful tool to be able to leverage the ability to map macros as well as just any individual key presses or mouse presses, all within these scroll wheels. Now this will be more pertinent probably to the control pad than it would be to the MK850, but I thought it was beneficial to highlight that. All right, one other thing that I wanted to show. In previous software, it was not possible to map the basically on the digital keys of the Xbox controller to all the Xbox buttons to individual keys. So now every single key that you can imagine on the Xbox controller, including the diagonals of the D-pad, you can assign them to any individual key on the keyboard. You couldn't do that before. And it's really kind of cool. I could just say, oh, I want that to be the start button, or I want that one to be the Y button, or whatever. You can remap it on the fly, and anytime that this Aimpad profile is active, that key will correspond to it. The other thing you were not able to do before, let's say if I go to my Star Citizen mapping, it's now possible to remap any of the analog sticks and the right triggers. It used to be a little wonky on the right analog stick, but all of that's been fixed, and it's now possible to map any analog axis to any analog key and any digital key or digital button to any digital key. So I think that is very effective. Now what I've done here is on the Lego Batman one, this is a specific profile that I set up that I wanted to identify. Actually, before I do this, I want to show one other thing. The M5 profile is a unique profile because it does something that the other profiles are not able to do, and that's to control the actuation point. This will hopefully be changed in future versions, but at the moment, M5 profile is the only one that can do this. So what it can do is it makes it possible for you to set the activation point of where the digital key, the normal WASD in this particular example, would activate, but still have analog control at the same time. So what this does is, let's say I bring up a combination of my Xbox controller and key press. So if I push the W key, you can see it's controlling up and down on the left stick, but as soon as I bottom out, it will press the W key on the keyboard, and the same thing for WAS and D. The advantage of that is that it allows me to have smooth analog control in a specific game, but I can still type normally to my friends. If you don't do that, then it is annoying that you would have to switch back and forth between different profiles to type, and then switch back and forth to make another profile active for a game. And this is one of the efforts to simplify that process. And so hopefully that's a little bit clear. Okay, back to my Lego Batman example. So if I go to Lego Batman, what I've done is set this up in lots of unique individual ways that help in this game. So I have WASD set up to be the left analog stick, and then I have Y, X, A, and B mapped to the I, J, K, L keys, and that maps corresponding to the same keys here. So I have Y, X, A, and B. If I go to the lighting effect, you can see it kind of looks like a Batman signal here on the right side of the keyboard, and I think it looks kind of cool, but also tells me, okay, the Batman profile is active on this specific profile, and then visually on the keys it's yellow. That shows I, J, K, and L are the Y, X, A, and B buttons that correspond to the color of those buttons on the Xbox controller, and I'll show you why that is important in this specific game. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Alright, so here we have Lego Batman. For those that have never played this game, it's actually a lot of fun, but definitely recommend playing it with your children if that is an option for you. But one thing I wanted to point out really quick is at the very beginning of this game, it says to press a key or a controller button to select a game input device. So this happens a lot in individual games, and something that is relevant for this is that since we mapped the Xbox controller buttons, the Y, X, A, and B buttons to it, it's important to start the game using one of those buttons. Otherwise, it's going to assume you want to use it as a keyboard, but we want to use it as an Xbox controller, okay? So I'm going to skip through a lot of this stuff just so that we're not wasting a lot of time through cutscenes. But once you're in the game, you have full control for analog functionality and have full Xbox controller. I'm going to get rid of these guys real quick so they're not bothering us. But one thing that's really fun is that because you have full analog control, you can control the way that Batman is kind of sneaking around. And it's not a huge deal. I mean, you can just play the game full speed running everywhere you go and things like that. But there's times where you want some fine control, but also it gives you a little bit of character that you wouldn't get otherwise using it as just a normal keyboard. And I think it's subtle in this specific game, but I think it's really just cool to see Batman, Lego Batman, move in a small, smooth function. Now, the other thing that was interesting is the ability to help you to remember which keys are needing to be pressed. Because you're using this as an Xbox controller, it may not be entirely clear. So you need to press a button on here, and it's in the bottom left corner that it says to press B to pull levers. You can't see it because of the little overlay there, but it says press B, and the B key is red. Now, if you remember, I mapped the Y, the J, the K, and the L keys to correspond to the Y, X, A, and B keys of the Xbox controller. So because it told me to press the red B button, I did that to help me remember, like, well, which one of these was the B button? It's like, oh yeah, this one is red. That's got to be the B button. So I push it, and lo and behold, yes, I was correct. So you can see it again clear on here. It says approach piles of Lego and hold B to build. So again, if I couldn't remember, oh yeah, B, red, 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 push that. So it's just an easy way that maps to the Xbox functions if you're not used to using Xbox controllers. This at least helps build a little bit of memory to associate it with. But you can press Y to swap between Batman and Robin. You can press B to use your grappling hook, and then the A button is to jump. And then typically have the X button is what allows you to punch things, and you collect these Legos and stuff like that. It's an entertaining game to play. And highly recommend playing it with a child. And something interesting you can do with this particular game, because you have an Xbox controller and keyboard in one device, what you can do is you can set this keyboard up and then press F2 on the keyboard, and that activates the keyboard functions for Batman. So I am controlling Robin as an Xbox controller here on the left, and I could have one of my sons or my daughter use the arrow keys over here and the numpad, so she's on the right side and I'm on the left side, and since I'm the dad, I get to use the cool analog controls. But we can both play this game at the exact same time, and that is a lot of fun to play this game, sit down on the couch, and you have this on your lap, and she can sit with you and play the game. And it's a really cool way to play this game together using the MK850. Alright, so hopefully you enjoyed that video, got a little bit of insight into the MK850 and the software and capabilities that it is able to do. If there's some things that you want to see improved in that software, or other feedback you would like to give to Cooler Master, please let me know, and I'll go ahead and pass it along to them. Thank you for watching, and if you like this video and want to see more, go ahead and subscribe. Otherwise, thank you for watching.